So we are all extremely grateful to her for agreeing to give this 5th Dr. M.V. Nadkarni Memorial Lecture. She's very well qualified for this responsibility by her long and close friendship with the Nadkarni family and by her even longer and very special relationship to Sri Aurobindo's Savitri. Today she's chosen as her theme, Living with Savitri. And that is just what she has been doing for about 60 years now. And as a young student of English literature at the Andhra University, of which her father, the great biographer of both Sri Aurobindo and the mother, the late Sri Professor K.R.S. Iyengar, was Vice Chancellor of that university. She became the first student in India, so far as we know, to undertake the massive task of writing a doctoral thesis on Sri Aurobindo's epic. Not only in India, in the whole world, she is the pioneer. And that thesis was passed summa cum laude, with great honours, by a panel of examiners from Britain. And the mother immediately gave instructions for it to be published in book form. And it has been reprinted several times. Most recently, it first appeared on November 24th, 1962, and it's been in constant demand ever since. And the latest edition was brought out by the Sri Aurobindo Society in 2011 with the title Sri Aurobindo Savitri, a study of the cosmic epic. And this book remains an indispensable reference work for all the Savitri lovers and students who have followed and will follow in Dr. Premaji's footsteps. She was a pioneer explorer of this massive terrain and the first to publish a comprehensive map of her journey, which continues to provide valuable illumination today. So it's our very great privilege and pleasure to welcome you, Dr. Premaji. I invite you, please, to share with us some of the valuable insights you've gained in the course of your many years of living with Savitri.
Sadhana Shastram Purna Yoga Pradarshanam Aravindanugraham Divyam Satya Dharma Sanjeevanam. Friends, the title has been proved by the electricity department. Living with Savitri is difficult. It can be an uncertain experience, but always capped by peace and joy. I'm very grateful to the creatrix of this Savitri Bhavan, Shraddhavan. She is the builder of this wonderful place, a wonderful name. And of course, it was very sweet of Meeraji to say all that about me. But then, as Shraddhavan said rightly, she has been, along with her husband, very close with my parents. I remember very well that day, Meeraji, in the Delhi ashram, Doordarshan had arranged for an interview of my father, and Nadkarniji was to interview him. They were made to sit in the lawns of New Delhi ashram, and from a distance, my mother and Meeraji were looking at them very proudly. Their husbands were there. And till the day of her passing, my mother used to say proudly, Meera, enna sonna theriyuma? father and son. Remember that. Which is very true. My parents considered Nandakumar to be their elder son. And apart from that, there were my own interactions with Nandakumar. So, though I accepted this assignment, which came as a great privilege to me in my longish career as a speaker, I have been starved for getting the right words at this time only twice. The first time was when my brother passed away, and on his 13th day I had to speak about him to his colleagues and students in the Indian Institute of Technology in Madras. And a lifetime has come now, because just as I had grown up with my brother till the time we completed our doctoral studies, I had grown up with Nandakumar's voice. Whether I heard him in person, which was not many times, but through recordings. And I always felt here was a voice which was born to recite Savitri. The way he would recite those lines, read out those lines, he had the entire thing before us like a moving picture. My father was very proud of him. Father and Nandakumar were academics, but academics with a difference. They took their profession of teaching seriously, and both of them loved to teach. They had what is known as job satisfaction. Just leave them alone in a classroom with students, they were happy. But when they took up the yoga of Savitri, they were different. They became tapaswins. Unknown to themselves, they were back in the Vedic Upanishadic days of gurus and sishyas, conveying thoughts and discussing them on an equal footing. They remained as amazed at Savitri's shorter significances as the listeners in their camps and study meetings. Living with Savitri is not easy. Here, every line becomes a testing ground, an experience, and one's emotions ought not to be dried up by philosophical discourses. Indeed, Nandakumar did not want us to approach the poem as a philosophical poem, for he knew that that was the wrong entrance to the epic. Is this possible with a poem which has subsumed a lifetime's engagement with the philosophies of the East and the West? Sri Auroville had studied the entire philosophy of the West and also the East. Fortunately, man is also gifted with a divine instrument to channelize his emotions in the proper growth. That divine instrument is faith. I was going through Narad's latest publication, and there it's a lexicon, and there I thought faith is faith. Now he has got me confused. After reading that book, now I wonder what is faith, what is confidence, and what is belief. It's very interesting. I never realized that you could approach the English language in Savitri in so many ways. And now I have this book with me, which I have already read in invocation, but I will go through it carefully, and then I will know what this English is. For me, faith in the Guru is enough. We simply surrender to the Savitri experience. And then suddenly the light glows in our life, which is indeed the stage where the conscious soul and the nature soul carry on their cosmic dance, steadily moving towards the greater dawn. Once again, I invoke today that firm faith in the Savitri experience, which my parents had and which Natkamiji had, that lighted up their earthly existence. That is all I know, and perhaps all that I need to know. Living with Savitri, I have prepared this paper because you have to prepare a lecture on Savitri. That was my father's rule. If you are asked to give a talk, whether you are going to give it as an extempore speech or a prepared speech, always prepare the speech. Type it down. It will improve your typing speed. That's what he used to say in those days. And it will help you to explore new avenues, not repeat the thing again. So this is probably a little bit autobiographical. I will see to it that the paper doesn't come there. I assure you, this has been my experience with Savitri. Never frustrated. I try my best to peer far into the past. 65 years? No, 70. The time I became definitely aware of Savitri as a book in my father's hands. As he read from it while my mother sat reverently, would be more than 7 decades. I was a little child of 5 or 6 years. I did not understand anything at that time except the scent of parijata flowers that had been strung as garlands by my mother to adorn the portraits of Sri Aurobindo and the mother. I do not think I even connected Sri Aurobindo with Savitri. All that I had to do was to bring that book to the place where he would read it. That's all. Prema, but an Indian child coming in the Vedic Puranic tradition lives with Savitri from the moment of listening to her grandmother retelling old tales to make her eat. Savitri was a familiar figure, and so was the story, as grandmother could give a striking description of Yama. He came riding the buffalo with a noose in his hand, and from childhood onwards, the Hindu girl becomes part of the Savitri Vrata ritual. In our families, although unmarried, even the girl child has the auspicious yellow thread tied to her wrist. This is an assurance for gaining a good husband. Please note, always it was for gaining a good husband. If we get married, the same ritual, but now the auspicious thread is a prayer for the longevity of the husband. And during my explorations, I find that this is there in many places. In Maharashtra, they have this ritual called Vati Savitri, when they go around the tree and tie the thread. On Vrata Day, they have recited oral narratives on Savitri's life. Tamil women have sung traditional songs based on the tale while performing the Vrata. However, the changing lifestyles, the distancing from ritualism, the impatience in performing such rituals, and the wrong priorities of the Vrata. Now the priorities on gifts, eatables, but not the self-discipline enjoyed by the Vrata. You see, I am part of the ritual world also, so I need a double life, you can say, as Dhanlakshmi was. I was telling Dhanlakshmi. So this is also part of my life. And all the time my sister-in-law phones, Savitri Nombacha, what are you going to cook specially today for Savitri Vrata? So Savitri Satyavan, that story is gone. What am I going to cook today? It becomes important. I am sure there are oral narratives in other Indian languages too, now fading away in the sands of time. One such narration in Tamil was retrieved from oblivion by the renowned social worker of Madras, Sister Subbulakshmi Amma, and was published 80 years ago. The sister's introduction to the work is deeply moving. Please remember this, Subbulakshmi had been widowed as a child
and her lifetime's work lay among widowed girls or abandoned girls, and yet she believed in this story. For she realized that what was important about the legend was the accession of soul strength one gained from the legend, and not merely retrieval of a husband's life. She says, "May everyone recite this powerful work and gain the grace of the Divine Mother and the power of well." The oral narrative of Savitri is essentially based on Vyasa, but has all the charming details of a domestic habit. It is in simple language and with a rhythmic beat, but there's a closeness to the goddess born of the lambent faith of common people that's quite different from the epic grandeur of Vyasa's verse. I must remind you here that I am the first schoolgoing girl of my village, the first matriculate, the first graduate and the first doctorate from my village. Education was not given to the girls there, and especially the girls of the Brahmin family. They were always tuned to the boy whom they must get, there is that novel about, what's that novel? About getting the boy, the suitable boy. So all these families, they were only interested in getting a suitable boy for their girls. So I had to rebel against it, but that's a different story. I must get back to Vyasa. So the ballad itself is about the rituals at home. These ladies, they did not have education, English education, or Tamil education. But they were only based in rituals. So they believed in these rituals and whatever accompanied these rituals. So you will find that Ashwapati, King Ashwapati, when he gets a daughter, you have all read Sri Aurovindo's Savitri. But the Ashwapati of that ballad, he is delighted, he takes his purificatory bath and distributes paddy and cash. It's known as Nireda. This happens even today. Even when my grandchild is born in America, we have to do it here. We have to distribute paddy and money. Woman-centered, this narrative associated with the vrata for assuring the auspicious life of a woman takes a special pride in describing the birth and growth of the girl child, the flame Savitri. That is the only unusual thing I find about this poem, the ballad, where a girl child is given so much importance. When she returns from her travels after choosing Satyavan, and Rishi Narad speaks of Satyavan's death within a year from now, Ashwapati asks Savitri to choose again. Her reply is unequivocal. பதிவிரதையானவர்கள் பக்தாவரித்த பின்பு பலபுருஷர் தேடுவரோ பதிவிரதா பகவன்றோ. Once a person has chosen a young man, that means she's already wedded to that man. So now I cannot go about choosing another person. Nadvitiyam Runomyam says Vyasa Savitri, and you will remember Sri Aurovindo Savitri also says the same thing. I shall not choose again. Again, women of those days fondly replay Savitri's wedding in this ballad as a retelling of the longish weddings in such homes. Savitri is every bride of these households. It is a regular 4-day ritual-rich wedding. After Ashwapati and his people leave for the city, Savitri puts away her ornaments and expensive garments and lives the very simple life of a forest dweller. The ballad does not deviate from the story like usual. And when my father was teaching Savitri to me, he would go back for so many decades and recount his 4-day marriage with my mother. Those days in Tamil Nadu, these people went through 4 days marriage. And my father was 22. My mother was 11. My mother always said, I was half his age, I was half his height, and nowhere near his age. Sister Subbalakshmi still, remember, chose this story for special study. By her inmates, they were all widows. For in its essentials, it taught a woman not to lose hope, be ready to face the tribulations of life, and hold on with faith in a greater power, so that she can overcome both societal and fate-directed shocks that battered her in life. This is the truth about Savitri religion, which Sister Sublakshmi noticed, and which took Sri Aurobindo also to choose Savitri as his heroine. Because it is not simply bringing back Satyavan's life, it is the way she empowers herself. Empowerment of women we say, our feminists will speak highly about empowerment of women. And in one seminar, because he spoke about Sita and Savitri, one lady got up and said, because of you old ladies, we are still caught in this Sita-Savitri syndrome. So do you realize what you say? You know the meaning of syndrome? It's a disease. You call Sita and Savitri our disease. So we had a nice fight. I'm always ready for one when somebody comes to me for argument. Right. By the time I completed my master's course, the poem Savitri had become a familiar document. Especially when the 1954 edition of the complete Savitri came to my home. I was now old enough to vaguely understand Father's musings on the poem when we went for our long walks together in the seaside city of Vishakhapatnam. For a few months, it was only Savitri that dominated our walks. He had been asked by his dear friend Surendranath Jauhar to wire the title of his speech at Delhi. Because Father used to go to Delhi and, Miraji knows how Chachaji would get in all these people to speak on Savitri. Ladkariji was one. And in 1954, he sent a wire, subject of your talk. And then Father sent a reply, simply Savitri. It became now imperative for him to take hold of the epic in toto, as well as in parts, for one never knew what doubts and questions may come from a Delhi audience. He was never one to take his speeches lightly, and probably I began living with Savitri the poem, as I know it now, during those walks to the beach skirting the Bay of Bengal. He was rehearsing his Delhi speech with me as the sole audience, who could not understand most of what he said. But it was always nice watching him. Father impressed upon me that it was the same story as that of Vyasa Supakhyana. Only, Sri Aurobindo had brought in his philosophy and made suitable modifications and some important changes which he will take time to understand. That's what Father told me. It will take some time to understand this poem. Sri Aurobindo can be very difficult sometimes. Only, he told me, you see, that is in 1944 his biography of Sri Aurobindo had been published. We are talking in 1954. He was telling me, you see, when I wrote my biography of Sri Aurobindo, Savitri was not spoken of at all. In 1944, where was Savitri? Because Savitri was in the making, in the ashram. She had not appeared to the outside world. My mainstay was the collected poems and plays of Sri Aurobindo that had been published in 1942. Shankar Gowda had got the 2 volumes autographed by the master and gifted the same to me. I have never received a richer gift in my life. I assure you, he gave these 2 volumes to me before he lost his eyesight completely. He said, you keep them. Of course, I was familiar with these yellow-covered volumes which were held in holy reverence by my parents. It was much later that the epic in making became news for the early days. By the 50s, the devotees of Sri Aurobindo wanted to know about its contents, and hence Father's wire was welcomed eagerly by Jawahar. To the best of my knowledge, that was the first speech on Savitri by Father, given early in 1955. For the following 4 decades, he literally lived with the poem along with my mother. She was so much taken up with it that though she had had no education, She began translating it into Tamil. This again became another extension of our living with Savitri. Father would patiently explain to her at times and encourage her. Unfortunately, this was only at brief intervals, as he was a very busy person. But she never gave up and has left behind her work, which I use when I write about Savitri in Tamil. And Shraddhavan has been kind enough to publish my articles on Savitri in Kannada, which carry my mother's translation. In the middle of 1957, I joined the doctoral course in Andhra University. I had to give the title of the subject. Father suggested Savitri, very natural. But in the eminence of my newly acquired degree, Master of Arts, Master of Arts, I told him that I had been listening to him on Savitri and had also read some pages. This philosophy is beyond me. Besides, that was my greater worry was, the judges may not take kindly to an Indian writing an epic in English, as Shraddhavan told you. Our thesis at that time had to be passed by 3 British professors. They would not accept even American professors. They had to be British professors. And I knew a British professor would only cut it off. You did your doctoral dissertation on Little Statue. I think I will go on another Bloomsbury author, Virginia Woolf. Actually, mine was not a rebellion. I would never contradict my father, and he understood my diffidence in my worried voice. In any case, his was not a nature to make my brother or myself do anything against our wishes. So it was Virginia Woolf, and the same day I went and bought the collected works of Virginia Woolf in several volumes that had just then been released by the Hogarth Press. The volumes are still with me, and the dissertation was never written. But the mother had other plans for my life. It is fairly well known to my friends how A.B. Puranji happened to come to the Andhra University around this time to deliver 2 lectures. He stayed in our house. Father and he were close friends. While he mesmerized the huge student audiences in the Erskine Square in the university, at home he spoke to my brother and myself with great love. One evening he was asking my brother Abhirajan and myself about our studies. With immense pride I told him that I was already working on my subject. That was the problem. My father noticed my answer. Father said smiling, well, Miraji knew my father very well. This was the way he used to. Purani, I asked her to take up Savitri, but she preferred Virginia only. She says she cannot understand Savitri, as if she is going to understand Mrs. Wolf. You should have seen my face at that. Purani immediately flared up. Really, Prema? I cannot forget anything that happened that evening. It changed my life's course so completely. Really, Prema? Then he went on to say that if Iyengar's daughter was afraid, who else will take up Savitri? Here is Iyengar to explain the whole poem and give guidance. If it is possible, I must make an attempt to change my subject. There was such passion in Puraniji's gestures and glow in his face as he spoke of the master and his disciples and how they had sat so very close to him as we were sitting together here. Sure, the master was here. We had our evening talks. You don't want to write on Savitri? Shame on you. Sri Aurobindo must have had a special reward for this university, he assured me. For had he not accepted the university's humanities prize? Did he accept any prize or award from anybody else? That is true, he accepted only the Andhra University's award. I was thoroughly shaken. Fortunately, in those days, changing a doctoral subject before the end of the first year was no problem. And so it was decided in the fading twilight of that day that I would live with Savitri as long as I was destined to live in this world. It has been a wonderful experience. First came the primaries. I was already a student of Indian history, so easily glided into the history shelves in the Andhra University Library to take notes on the freedom movement. That is the easiest part of Sri Aurobindo's life. You can take notes so much on the freedom movement. That was the life of Sri Aurobindo. Persons associated with him like C.R. Reddy and Subramani Bharati. I entered a fascinating world and have remained wandering in it since those days in the late 50s. Among other things, I had to go to the library and read all available epics in English or in English translation. The problem was my father was a very hard taskmaster. I had to write it down, then he will correct it. For father said, I must try to play Savitri in world literature. He taught me to take notes and also quotations in the card index system. All those cards, grown somewhat brown by time, are still with me. And I am amused at my adventures. Certainly it improved my handwriting, I guess, as it improved my time. But there was also the actual living with Savitri that went on day by day. Apart from reading and explaining and making me write summaries of cantos, father, as was usual with us for several years, would take me towards the Ramakrishna beach in the coastal town of Visakhapatnam daily. And so we walked the 3 kilometers when it was still dark. Before the sun rose, we were seated on the sands facing the east, while father recited the opening canto. It was the hour before the gods awake. He would recite the entire first canto by memory. And day after day, he would dwell fondly over the lines and explain them as a petal by petal blossoming of dawn, the eastern sky forming the backdrop. See, all can be done with the God touches. A hope stole in that hardly, a hope stolen that hardly dared to be amid the night's forlorn indifference, as if solicited in an alien world with timid and hazardous instinctive grace, orphaned and driven out to seek a home, an errant marble with no place to live, into a far-off nook of heaven, there came the slow, miraculous gestures. The persistent thrill of a transfiguring touch persuaded the inert black quietude, and beauty and wonder disturbed the fields of God. When the sun had risen, russet and brilliant, we began our walk home. This is the way I learned how just reading or reciting Savitri could form tapasya, for such was my father's son. I would not call my own life as coming anywhere near the sadhana of my parents. They formed such a total contrast, probably to prove to me that living with Savitri was possible for everyone. He was a superb scholar with a fantastic memory, always lecturing, traveling, writing articles, writing books, sitting motionless for hours, only his hands active with the proofs, correcting and correcting again. She was a quiet housewife whose home was her world. With no formal schooling, she had come to her husband's tiny flat in Belgaum as a 13-year-old. But she educated herself by sheer willpower, of course helped by my father, who encouraged her to learn Marathi. And slowly and surely, she became a voracious reader, translator, and writer. Naturally, she was drawn to Sri Aurobindo. Whether she understood the sentences or not, she read him and equipped herself so well that she could help father in reading the proofs of his revised books on Sri Aurobindo and the mother in the 70s. The last decade of her life she spent in translating Savitri into Tamil. One could see as she struggled with the words and a variety of English-Tamil dictionaries, her one-pointed involvement in the poem. What gave her strength to dare this was the mother's message. reading Savitri is yoga. We have never done Judy yoga. Mother has said that reading Savitri is yoga. I am performing yoga. You can say what you want. Like a child, she would say that. I am witness to the fact that this involvement in the poem helped her bear with two major tragedies in her life at an advanced age. She never complained. It is mother's will, she would whisper, and all at once was said. The lesson that I learned from these two lives was this. This is how you live with something. Make it the central beam of your life, and the house will stand till the transformatory moment, and then hold your hand when you take your next step to the beyond. Savitri will hold our hands. So what is it that I have found in this poem which has been of soul sustenance? Watching my parents was one thing, but to bring a lifetime's involvement in the poem was altogether different. And there were moments when I withdrew to a distance. Again, as it happened with the coming of Puraniji to our home, when I had entered my doctoral studies, a moment of realization flashed upon me, totally changing my view of life itself. To put it briefly then, you'll have to forgive me for having trouble with the reading. See, since I lost vision in my left eye, I'm still to come to terms how to read the page properly. Way back in the 60s, I had just received my doctoral degree for my thesis on Savitri. I was living in Ranchi then, a young housewife with a little child, unable to go out and take up a job. They were still building the heavy engineering corporation at that time in Ranchi. My parents had come for a holiday. And I was washing vessels. I hope Shraddha remembers my first talk in Savitri Bhavan. I was washing vessels in the sink when my father, Professor Iyengar, stood near me discussing some passage of Savitri. I don't know which passage. I suddenly burst out. There was no need for me to go through all those years of heavy study of this epic and its philosophy to get a degree. If I was to end up washing vessels like this, typical rebellion of a daughter who thinks she knows everything. So, I suppose nursing some self-pity. My father said quietly, "What are you doing now?" This is the philosophy of Savitri in action. "What do you mean?" I asked. He continued. You see, I have this practice of writing a diary that helps you to keep things on record. You are washing vessels with a cleaning powder, tamarind and water, and do not stop till they become bright. Then you are keeping them in the shelf according to their size and utility. Right? That's what we do, isn't it? The vessels have acquired now a new blue. The philosophy of Sri Auroville and the Mother also teaches us how to cleanse our consciousness encrusted with a variety of desires and emotions. It has to be a constant aspiration, like the daily cleaning you have to undertake at home. But man has risen to a higher plane than matter, unlike the vessels. The living person gets transformed into the cleaned brightness, shorn of all dirt, and that is the transformative moment. Till that transformative moment occurs, you have to go on cleansing your consciousness. You go on trying to do the work given to you, aspiring for perfection with total faith in the divine. Do not think of your degree as a means to get you a monthly salary. This was the mantra he told me, which I have adhered to till today. A student of Savitri is in the unique position of having taken the first step towards the life divine. You have to be a student of the poem for all your life. The transformation will come in its own time. Perhaps not now, nor in this life. Remember, a father is speaking to his young daughter with a little child. Perhaps not now, nor in this life, but at the proper moment, probably in the next future. This is yoga, nothing less. nothing more. From that moment, when his quiet words created a spandana in my being, I have never looked back. For Father's words taught me two great values which are themselves interlinked. From that day till now, I have never felt domestic work to be a burden at all, but have found positive joy in doing daily chores. And I have learned that all life is one, though it gets manifested in various ways. There is no such thing as high and low in action. All action that leads to human betterment is divine action. All life is indeed yoga. A point amply demonstrated by Savitri's life. The princess of Madhura, who is the great tapaswini, the Dhyana Yoga Parayana as she is described by Vyasa. She was actually serving her in-laws. Swashrum Shavira Satkare Sarve Rachanani Swashuram Dev Satkare Vachaha Samimanecha Tataiva Priyavadena Naipunena Samenacha Rahasra is Upacharena Bhatta Maryatoshi. She made happy her in-laws by the proper ways of serving, and she made her husband happy with sweet words, pleasant words. We see the same Savitri in Sri Aurobindo's epic. So it is almost an exact translation of the passage. She is in the forest dwelling now, living a Spartan life with Satyavan and his parents. And what does Sri Aurobindo see Savitri doing? She made herself the diligent serf of all, nor spared the labor of broom and jar and I assure you it needed Sri Aurobindo to make the broom a poetic word, which has been very well caught upon by our Aam Aadmi Party now. She made herself the diligent serf of all, nor spared the labor of broom and jar and well. A close gentle tending, or to heat the fire of altar and kitchen. So first time when Shraddhavan had invited me to give a talk here, as was my wont, when her mail came, I just opened my Savitri. My eyes fell on these two lines. So I gave her the title of Altar and Kitchen. No slight task allowed to others that her woman's strength might do. In all her acts, a strange divinity shone. Into a simplest moment, she could bring a oneness with earth's glowing robe of light, a lifting up of common acts by love. However, living with Savitri brings us other wonderments too. Since you cannot read Savitri in isolation, one has to keep walking towards the receding horizon constantly. It really begins with the opening canto. Is this a mere physical description of dawn? Certainly it is an accurate description of the coming of dawn upon earth. Because Father would tell me, the same day of Bengal, Sri Aurobindo must have watched in Pondicherry also. These are the little things that the Acharya puts into his disciples' mind. That would take us to Sri Aurobindo's different openings. There are several passages on dawn that Sri Aurobindo has written. Chitrangada has an opening on dawn, Lupi, and of course the sublime, fate-propelled, sad dawn that rises over Ilion in his epic. Then, if we start going to the dawn aspect in Sri Aurobindo's Savitri, it would slip us into the hymns to Usha in the Vedas, which had been studied and translated by Sri Aurobindo. I was so charmed by the hymns to Usha that I used one of them as the epigraph to the first part of my doctoral dissertation. Beholding the higher light, this is his translation. Beholding the higher light beyond the darkness, we come to the divine sun in the Godhead, to the highest light of all. This is from the Veda. Then there is the cue that Sri Aurobindo himself has spoken of Savitri as a symbolic myth of the Vedic cycle. How Savitri leads us to the Vedas. He says, Satyavan is the soul carrying the divine truth of being within itself, but descended into the grip of death and ignorance. Savitri is the divine word, daughter of the sun, goddess of the supreme truth, who comes down and is born to save. Ashwapati, the lord of the horse, her human father, is the lord of tapasya, the concentrated energy of spiritual endeavor that helps us to rise from the mortal planes. Here again he refers to Satyavan as descended into the grip of death and ignorance. You will find that if you read the entire Mahabharata, there is another canto on Satyavan in the Anushasana Parva. Savitri's story occurs in the one Parva. As I was telling Dhanlakshmi, I was answering a question from her. That in the Anushasana Parva, again you come across Satyavan and Bhimatsena. They are having a discussion, and that is about capital punishment and how Satyavan is totally against capital punishment. So I call him the first human rights activist. Right, my name? This is an area of unending research. If the research is transformed into one's yoga. Sri Aurobindo himself has opened the charmed magic casements for us to enter the Vedas, as also the culture inspired by the Vedas. This has been a personal gift from Savitri, that not only have I drawn closer to our Vedic heritage, but have understood, however dimly, why I go through the samskaras, rituals of worship, and the rest as a traditional housewife. You must remember that I come from a strange milieu where menfolk are authorized to learn, recite, and talk about the Vedas, but not the women. I have no right to recite the Vedas. Men have the right to perform worship to Salagrama and the image of the deities, but not women. I have not been upset about the ban on ritual worship. But we are allowed to worship our favorite deities in our own way. I can make any number of garlands for my Krishna and Ananda, or offer them a chalice of cow's milk. But why should there be a ban on reciting? Some explanations are given. Of course, I have given one explanation. Men folk have given up all their good works to women. Car driving, nowadays, more women drive the cars. More women take up responsible positions. So let them do at least reciting the Vedas properly. We will not invade that area. This is very interesting because in the Vedas, you have 90 women rishis, who are known as rishikas. They have received this voice of God. And even today, when my husband performs Sandhya, he has to invoke Savitri and Gayatri. Without these female goddesses, his Sandhya is not complete. Contrary to the generally held belief that the Vedas were received only by men, women had an important part even in receiving the messages from the eternal and channelizing them into significant poetry. At the dawn of Indian civilization, women were able to spread and teach Vedas and were called Brahmavadis. So studying Savitri has drawn me close to the Vedic hymns. Once I was invited to speak on the Vedas in the Shankara Mata at Kumbakonam, very traditional to the power of tea, and had chosen Shavasva's hymns to Bhaga Savitri to speak about Sri Aurobindo's contribution to Vedic studies. Any chance given to me to speak, I always make use of the benediction, because it makes it grander. And poor Sri Aurobindo, he has been tortured so much. I carefully refrained from quoting the original text. I gave only Sri Aurobindo's translation. The elderly Vedic scholar appreciated it and said, "This has been the tradition. I am glad you didn't break the tradition in this matter." And yet, we know Sri Aurobindo has drawn the symbol of Savitri from the Vedas. From where did he get the symbol? It was from the Vedas. But Vedic symbol or real life character or imagination, it is amazing that of all our Puranic heroines, Savitri is the one name with which no one has taken liberties. It's amazing. There have been imaginative recreations of what could have been the life of a Sita, a Damayanti, or Draupadi. But Savitri is the same, whether she is in a Tamil ballad, or an English epic, or a narrative poem, or a film in which Shanta Apte used the role of Savitri. I made it a point to see all the films that have been taken on the subject of Savitri, Telugu, Tamil, Marathi, and this is actually a Tamil film in which the Marathi actress Shanta Apte has acted. Very interesting. And M.S. Subbulakshmi comes there as Rishi Narayan. Recently I came across Fourth Dimension, a Shiva Vagara film on Shiva Auroville Savitri. I have not seen it, but I am told it is an interpretation of Shiva Aurobindo's epic. From the write-up I saw there was no misinterpretation and felt happy. After all, each generation needs its own diction to draw close to truth. And we have entered the age of the visual. And as Savitri is truth, I guess nobody dares trifle with her personality. Nobody has done it so far. All the same, this half a century's engagement with the epic has taught me to get involved in serious thinking. Just as Ramana Maharshi's "Who am I?" is a question that follows one as a shadow. Why the change is a question that remains with us. If we become a student of Vyasa's Mahabharata and Sri Aurobindo's poem at the same time, the answers are not yet complete. They can be completed only when one stops reading or meditating upon Savitri. And that is impossible for a child of the Divine Mother who has assured all of us reading Savitri is yoga. I won't give up reading Savitri. This itself has been a gift of living itself. It begins with the question, what is this book of the traveler of the world? This book of the traveler of the world. These things you must have heard either my father speak or my Carnegie speak. I don't know but the clue is there in Vyasa's original. The austerities of King Ashopati to get a progeny. 18 years of chanting Gayatri and performing the fire sacrifice. There is a vision of the Divine Mother Savitri who assures Ashopati, a radiant virgin, Kanya Tejaswini Saurabha, Shiprameva Bhavishyasi, should be born soon to him. A straightforward movement in the tale, but it has made sure that's all. She gives the boon and soon we hear of Ashopati having a daughter. But Sri Aurobindo has thought about it, and the result is the book of the traveler of the worlds, the book of the Divine Mother. This is massive expansion indeed. But remember, it is not addition of adipose rhetoric. He has himself made it clear that he has not written anything for the sake of picturesqueness or merely to produce a rhetorical effect. This is what he says. Sri Aurobindo is here recording an experience as he has pointed out in a letter. He says, Savitri is the record of a seeing. You must all be familiar with this passage. Savitri is the record of a seeing, a darshana, of an experience which is not of the common kind and is often very far from what the general human mind sees and experiences. This is a call from us for an extension of our consciousness to understand and appreciate the poem. Remember, he says, I have seen all this. Don't think it is just a story, it's not a mere imagination. This attempt at expanding our consciousness, not satisfied with ourselves, puts us on a sunlit path. The sheer joy of knowing that somebody has actually experienced all this inspires us. I knew that the political interregnum in Sri Aurobindo's life had given him a direct experience of inferno. So I have always found two cantos in the book of the traveler of the worlds absolutely realistic, especially because of my stint with political journalism. And I can assure you, interviewing politicians in India, it is himself. No report of India's experiment with democracy during the last 6 decades, including the election that took place in my native Sri Lanka just 5 days ago. I have got the mark in my left finger. I am a very dutiful citizen. I went and exercised my vote. No report of India's experiment with democracy during the last 6 decades can be as accurate as Sri Auroville Savitri. The bull-throat bellowed with its brazen tongue. I always wonder, did he hear this particular poem? No, he had gone into Mahasamadhi in 1950 and Savitri was written given to him. But this is happening today. The bull-throat bellowed with its brazen tongue. Its hard and shameless clamor filling space and threatening all who dare to listen to truth, claiming the monopoly of the backward ear till 12 o'clock at night. It would go on in earlier years. Now, thanks to the election officers' ban, it stops at 10 o'clock. If not, they go on. We are unable to study in our homes. A deafened acquiescence gave its vote. Ours is a deafened acquiescence. And braggart dogma shouted in the night, kept for the fallen soul once deemed a god, the pride of its abysmal absolute. This is a perfect description of today's political scenario in India. That is why I have never doubted the accuracy of his other experiences, either as a traveler of the world or later his experiences about the battle between Savitri and Rama. Here is what he has seen about the next future. There was no sob of suffering anywhere. Experience ran from point to point of joy. Bliss was the pure, undying truth of things. All nature was a conscious front and forth. Wisdom worked in all, self-moved, self-sure, a plenitude of illimitable life, an authenticity of intuitive truth, a glory and passion of creative force, infallible, living from eternity. So you see, all this he has seen, all this will come to be, that is my faith. There were then the new major insertions by Sri Aurobindo in the original tale that I had known. One such is the Book of Love. It is a tremendous passage where Savitri remains a regal princess and yet a shy, adorable bride. In the original Vyasa Upakhyanā, you don't have Satyavan and Savitri meeting. This is an insertion by Sri Aurobindo. Satyavan remains the exiled prince who had grown up in the forest, and yet his future has had a wonderful education. Sri Aurobindo suggests, by making nature as the teacher of Satyavan, instilling in him heroism and love, hard work and gentle ways, he makes him a vehicle of truth. Self-effacing Satyavan. What made Sri Aurobindo speak of him as the soul carrying the divine truth of being within itself, but descended into the grip of death and decay? That is where, as I told you earlier, comes this passage. A question that chased me for nearly 35 years. Till it struck me that the answer lay in yet another book of the Mahabharata. A canto that reports the conversation between Bhimatsena and Satyavan when they argue about the right and wrong of capital punishment, and the son is unflinching in his arguments, reveal why Satyavan is indeed the soul carrying the divine truth of being. Satyavan rejects capital punishment outright, proving the ancient ideal of India. Karyam Karunam. In Ramayana, we have this wonderful passage when Hanuman comes to Sita. After the battle is over, Ravana has been killed. He says, Mother, these Rakshasis have given you so much trouble. How do you want me to destroy them? You want me to kill them? You want me to kill them by suffocating them or burning them? What do you want me to do? Then the Divine Mother says, only the Mother can be so compassionate. Papanam va shubhanam va padarthanam arindam karyam karunamani nakaschid naparajit. My son, Arindam,
same Papanam or Shubhanam. Even when you meet people who have done auspicious deeds, which may not be to your liking, because it is an auspicious deed to have killed Ravana from the viewpoint of Hanuman, isn't it? Whatever it is. No one deserves to be killed. No one deserves to be killed. Karyam karunam aryena. Arya, you will not have read the explanation of the term Arya. It is nothing about, it does not refer to a group of people. Arya here means noble. The way of the noble person is karuna, compassion. Karyam karunam aryena. The Aryan, the noble person should have compassion. Nakashchandnaparadhiti, she adds, there is no one who has not committed a mistake. Because she remembers that she had scolded Lakshmana in the forest. So she feels bad. So if the mother herself would feel like that, it's not surprising that Satyavan says, compassion is the note of the Arya. This killing another person, it is against the rule of nature. The imaginative yet vital introduction of Savitri's mother and the discussion between the queen and Narada can never fail us. It's a detailed one, we will meet at that. The theory of avatarhood is brought out beautifully in this book of Fate, which has also the wonderful lines on the Passion of Christ. It is finished, the dread mysterious sacrifice offered by God's mortal body for the world. Gethsemane and Calvary are his lot. He carries the cross on which man's soul is named. His escort is the curses of the crowd. Insult and jeer on his right's acknowledgement. Two thieves slain with him mock his mighty death. He has trod with bleeding brow the Saviour's way. He who has found his identity with God pays with the body's death his soul's vast delight. I have read these passages in many scores of inter-religious conventions and watched with joy and pride the way the faces have blossomed as line followed line like the brass bell pealing atop the temple spire. I've had bishops telling me that no English poet, no Christian poet has written so beautifully about Christ's passion as your Sri. I'm glad to know that he is my Sri. So I have lived with Maladi's questions. I have actually seen a physical demonstration of the Savitri lines. I don't know how she really wrote this, but I have seen this. Your mother's heart had heard the fateful speech that rang like a sanction to the call of death and came like a chill close to life and death. Yet hope sank down like an extinguished fire. She felt the leaden inevitable hand. You know, when your mother is told your son has only 3 months to live by the doctor, the son has been struck down again. How the mother feels, I've seen the face, and so Sri Aurobindo is really so very realistic. And Maladi's questions also are just like our questions. Why should this happen to me? Why should my left eye go? I asked my husband. Then he laughed. Why you have your right eye is okay? Why do you want? Nice to have a husband like that. Is fate everything Maladi asks? And says a great illusion has been the stars, but back then is the soul's security, its poise, the circling of unreal suns. All this is so very natural, so realistic. So I don't know why they say Savitri is difficult to understand. It is about our experience, our day-to-day experience. When she asks so many questions, Rishi Narad gives a long speech. Actually, if you cut up the speech into so many blocks and read it one at a time, you will find every block fits to your day-to-day experience. And this is what he says, never to lose hope and never misplace faith in the Supreme. For this is Sri Aurobindo's last message to humanity. He revised the book of Fate, that was the last canto to be revised.
Rishi Narad says, death is the spirit's opportunity. The vast intention has brought two souls close, and love and death conspire towards one great end. For out of danger and pain, heaven bliss shall come. Time's unforeseen event, God's secret plan. So, this is what you come to understand when reading Savitri. It is nothing beyond our experience. We are experiencing it all the time. We are living with Savitri, only we are not reading her. In day-to-day life, we are experiencing Savitri, and there is, of course, the marvelous Savitri's yoga. Aurobindo Savitri is an amazing example that proves how one does not cancel out the other. And it is when both the internal and external lives move in rhythm that the transcendence is achieved. This earthly life is very real to us. Living with Savitri has certainly helped me overcome the moments of unreality in this life, and thereby helped me overcome depression. It could be very small, a very brief thing. You feel depressed. Even you are unable to write the review, you feel depressed. Such a small thing, or a major problem in your life. But Savitri is not the same. We live here and now, and it is from here that we move upwards. That is the lesson of Savitri. Hence, life with its bondage is real, and all these attachments are real. I have marveled that prior to entering the world of Savitri's yoga, Sri Aurobindo gives us a clear idea of her mental makeup. She thinks of others, and it is this consideration for others that makes her a perfect human being. When she has to think of her future without Satyavada, she doesn't take the easy way out. She is giving us a lesson. Sri Aurobindo is teaching us. No sati for her. She thinks of the aged parents of whom one is blind. With her son gone, what will they do? She is not thinking of herself, she is thinking of those old people. So she will live for their sake. That is the Matri Hridaya, gifted to womanhood, and which is very much in the young bride, brought up in the Indian tradition. She dreamt of her body robed in funeral flesh. She wants to commit suicide first, then she reduced it. She knew she must not clutch that happiness to die with him and follow, seizing his robe across other countries. Travelers glad into the sweet or terrible beyond. For those sad parents still would need her here to help the empty remnant of their deed. Often it seemed to her the age's pain had pressed that quintessence into her single O, concentrating in her a tortured world. These aged parents, of whom Vimarsena is blind, they seem to concentrate the entire pain of the world to her, and so she decides she will not give up. So we have the panoramic 6 cantos spread in the book of yoga. If Ashokati's yoga was not very easy to follow, where we had at least plenty of signposts as solid images, whether it was a world stand or godheads of little and greater mind, godheads of little and greater life, and so on. The perfect icon of the oratory that would lead to the Divine Mother as Ashokati's yoga enters the final stage of total self-effacing is also there in Ashokati's yoga. You all know how it has become now for us the Matri Mandir. This step in yoga has been gifted to us where he describes Ashokati sitting in yoga. This step has been gifted to us with an icon in our Matri Mandir. However, when following Savitri's yogas, apart from the 3 mothers, we have no firm icons to hold on to. But here, as in the marvelous books on eternal night, double twilight, and everlasting day, light itself gets solidified into a visible icon we can hold on to. As Sri Aurobindo's sublime poesy marks the various stages we get to cross even after triumphing in yoga. Living in Savitri as living with Savitri and Sri Aurobindo tends to make your sentences long. After being chased away by light, after that great battle, death has returned in the everlasting day, chained and transfigured, writes K.R. Srinivasa. Saul the scourge becomes Paul the apostle. And death, the dark god and red destroyer, becomes a god of light and everlasting, and life everlasting. As Savitri gazes at this wonderful face that bears the mystery of a nameless name, there is an immediacy of response. The more she looks at him, the more is she surprised and charged with delightful service. Is he verily the fourfold being, the architect of the world? So the death has become God again. Death has become life. So there is a beautiful description of the divine quadrilateral and all that. And then there is this passage where we are given the hope that all earth shall be the Spirit's manifest home, hidden no more by the body and the life, hidden no more by the mind's influence. I have been reading Savitri for so many years. Is there a final word that I put in? Continued engagement with Savitri has been ananda as well as puzzlement. Where am I? On the sunlit path sloping upwards, or am I going around in circles, experiencing Goethe's past here, and Dante's Divine Comedy, or the Epic of Nico's Cousin Service? I have piled up notes and books and papers, and even files during all these decades. But have I gone nearer Sri Aurobindo's poem because of all this external help and spreading my thoughts around in ink? I have no answer. I see in my mind's eye a young girl trying to type the last page of her thesis, 600 pages, not on a computer, on an Olivetti typewriter, where I have to insert 4 carbon papers so that I can get 5 copies, and then I will have to retake if I commit more than one mistake. That's the rule of law. The young girl looks at the last paragraph of her thesis, courage to probe other personalities. But for me, these words set down in 1960 have formed the red badge of courage, the blue lotus of wisdom for 55 years. Living with Savitri has been carrying a chalice of faith in hand, a faith that never fails. Indian tradition has a familiar quote, Apadim kim karani. What should be done in an emergency? The answer comes, Smaraniyam Charanayugal Ambaya. We should remember the feet of our mother. I go to the feet of the mother again. Thank you all, and conclude saying Satya.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all for your patience.